Hello, welcome back. You are watching Insight live here on Raw 12:51 a.m. I'm your host, Edith Makungu, and I apologize for my sore throat, apparently. Um, Today on Insight, we're going to be discussing all the biggest stories of the week. Starting with Boris backs bully. A new report has come out claiming Priti Patel bullied several senior members of the civil service, but Boris Johnson has refused to fire her, saying that she's given a full and frank apology, and the head of the inquiry is now resigned over this issue. Corbyn or Corb out. Jeremy Corbyn has been sort of unsuspended from the Labour Party, but Keir Starmer has not allowed him back into the parliamentary Labour Party for at least another 3 months. What does this mean for Keir Starmer's leadership? Do we think we can see a leadership challenge? And also the little coup that couldn't. Donald Trump, you may not notice, Donald Trump is still the president of the United States of America, and he's trying to cling on to that very, very hard. He's launched several lawsuits to try and claim the election has been fraudulent, but none of them seem to be getting very far so far. And we can see where that's going to go over the course of today's show. I'm also going to talk about the new Oxford vaccine and what that means for you at home. But first, I want to introduce my wonderful panel today, starting with Arthur. Arthur, welcome to the stream.
Hello.
Hello. Arthur, it's been a while since I've seen you on Even Insight. I don't think it's been since last term.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I'm just quite dysfunctional and disorganized. So and I don't check Facebook much either. So those two kind of factors mean I often miss out the pictures. So I do apologize, but I'm here now, and that's what's important.
Yeah, that's good. So what have you been, obviously since I last saw you, what have you been working on recently? I know you're always writing on those blog posts, you're always writing perspectives. What have you been working on most recently?
I don't know, I mean, maybe football I have an NDA policy, I don't know, but I've got an article. I've got an article about I've got an article about Dominic Cummings and the Lee Kane saga coming up next week. But that aside, I mean, I've got a dissertation to write, so the articles have been less of the have been shunted to the side compared to last year, because obviously I do need to pass my degree, sadly. So
sad. That is always the dread horror. You have to actually do work for your degree.
I know, it's unbelievable.
No, it's absolutely unfair. If we're just to live full lives and also do essays all the time, it's ridiculous. The stuff the university asks of us. Let's bring on someone who's sort of maybe less horrified by the university workload yet. Will Kingswood. Will, welcome to the stream.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for asking. It's always nice when someone asks how I am, nor than me asking how they are on the show. It's always nice when that happens. Will, this is I think your first time on Insight. I don't think you've come on the show before.
No, this is my first time. So I'm looking forward to getting started and talking about all the topics we're going to look at this week.
Yeah. But you have been on our US election night overstream. What was that like? Because obviously I wasn't actually on it. I was directing it behind the scenes. What was it like being live for 3 hours?
I was on for the first 2 hours, which looking back on it might have been a mistake because I was quite tired by the end of it. But I think I started a bit slowly, but as soon as I got into it, it got better and better, and it was really interesting just looking at what was happening throughout the night.
Yeah, and obviously, clearly you liked it because you come back and you joined us for this. A fresh who's been on more often, Imogen, welcome to the stream.
Hiya.
Imogen, you told me something very exciting recently. You've got a new job with the Green Party. Your campaigns officer. Please tell us a bit more about it.
Well, yeah, so with Warwick Greens, I'm now the campaigns officer, which is really exciting. So we're currently working on a campaign to do with divesting from corporate finance. And so, I really I wait to get involved with like starting up this campaign and getting support around it and working with other societies and stuff. So especially like in the current situation, I think it's a really interesting campaign year, and I can't wait to get started on it for sure.
Yeah. So how obviously, now you may not notice, but for people at home, Warwick is obviously very heavily supported by sort of corporate finances and that sort of thing. So what are you doing to get the university to sort of drop these sponsorships?
So the first thing is trying to find out exactly where they're investing, because that is very difficult to find out. They're very secretive. They have, I think a few years ago in maybe 2018, maybe further in the past than that, but they were basically we're going to divest from bad companies that invest in fossil fuel practices, but it was very vague, and I felt there was not enough transparency in that, and there was not enough transparency in general, trying to find out where they're investing. So that the main thing is to like just find out where they're investing, what's bad, like what the bad companies, and the kind of consequences of that, and spreading awareness about it. And then, of course, trying to find people that are sympathetic in the finance department and potentially in other areas of the university that want to work with us on this campaign, and kind of push for Warwick to be fully transparent in where they're investing and where they're putting their money. So I know that there was the all student vote recently on a few different areas. So it is a like a prominent topic at Warwick at the moment. And although some of the motions didn't pass, I still think that by spreading awareness of these different issues will definitely help boost the momentum of this campaign for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go right into the show. Let's start with our first topic today. Just very briefly, I want to talk about the Oxford vaccine. It's come out, I think, early today. Oxford has a new vaccine that is 70% effective on the first dose and 90% effective on the second dose. They're currently seeking emergency sort of authorization for it. The UK has over 100 million orders ready to go, doses ready to go if it is approved. I want to come around the panel and ask first reactions. This is the third time we've had a vaccine. Again, very promising news. And most importantly, very promising news for us, because it seems like we have a lot of it ready immediately. Will, I'll come to you first.
I mean, it's just good to see another vaccine that's almost ready to be distributed. We've had Pfizer, we've had Moderna, and now we've got the Oxford vaccine. I think it just shows how, if we put our mind to things as a species, we can really get issues solved. And it should show how we can, maybe if we applied this much effort to issues like climate change, we could solve that much more easily as well.
Yeah, well, climate change, let's go straight to you, Imogen. What do you think about this new vaccine?
It's definitely promising, and it's really good to see it happening so quickly. Just given the how much funding has gone into it, and how much people just really want to get a vaccine for this. However, I am worried about these big Western states just getting all of these vaccines and then completely having the ability to be able to hoard them, and then they're not going to the states that would probably need it in terms of not having a strong enough healthcare system. So I'm a little bit precarious of that, although it is good for us to have this many doses. We do need to be aware of it is a global situation, and now isn't the time to be acting nationalistic and doing what's best for Britain. We need to be acting as a global response and making sure that loads of different countries are able to respond to this pandemic in the same way that the rest of us are.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, it should be noted, Oxford vaccine, they're saying it's going to be free while we're still in a pandemic situation. It's going to be free for everyone to access. And they're currently build distribution centers as Imogen said, also under places that wouldn't necessarily be able to afford it or create their own vaccine. Martha, I want to come to you there. What is your reaction to this vaccine?
I mean, it's good. It's great. I mean, it's another question whether we'll be able to distribute it over the next few months in a way which means you'll be able to open up the economy meaningfully for too long. Because I believe with the original Pfizer vaccine, it had to be stored at minus 80 degrees or something ridiculous. So there could be distributional issues. So, I mean, obviously, we're not quite out of the clear yet. I mean, distributing the vaccine and getting it to everyone, and also countering kind of narratives about vaccines, which would make people less likely to take them. There's still a big task ahead, but it's quite promising news, and it's good.
Yeah. And we have our final guest who's finally joined us. Adam, welcome to the stream. Adam, can you hear us?
Hello. Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Hello. Yes, I can hear you, Adam. Fantastic. Now, Adam, I want to come to you because Arthur's touched on something very important there, which is over the past year, we've seen a growth of sort of anti-medical science narratives, like anti-mask narratives. Of course, this is the big one, anti-vax narratives. How do you feel the government should counter this in trying to get people to vaccinate next year if we have a vaccine that works?
Well, I'm so glad you asked me that, because one of the things I am studying is looking at the population of fake news across sort of the sphere. And really what we need to do is what the government desperately needs to do is really try to come up with a strategy for actually showing people the fact that that the vaccine is safe, and really emphasizing the role of independent bodies. We have to bear in mind, though, that not everybody will be swayed by it. But what we need to do is try and get the vast majority of people who might have legitimate concerns to recognise that the MHRA, the independent medical regulator, would be doing everything they normally do to ensure that a vaccine is safe, like they do for things like the flu vaccine and for our generic medicines that we take if we've got, say, a sprained wrist or backache or anything like that. The MHRA do a fantastic job in ensuring that these incredibly high standards are met, and the government need to capitalise on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Now let's turn to our next. First topic of the day. First thing I'm banner for. Boris backs bully. Now, ever since I think early February, we've been hearing reports of Priti Patel being abusive or bullying her staff. And last week, a draft report was released claiming that this was in fact true. Now, since then, a variety of events have happened. The man behind the report has resigned because Boris refused to back him by sacking Priti Patel. We've heard that Boris maybe watered down the report. I want to ask you, panel, in the week that's supposed to be Boris Johnson's big relaunch after losing Dominic Cummings, do we think it worked? Do we think he's successfully had a successful relaunch week with this story hanging over his head? I'll come to you first, Imogen.
I just think that it's a bit pitiful, really. I think that we've with Cummings going, we think, right, okay, Boris will be able to kind of start his new agenda and kind of like just think for himself. I just can't really see him like taking this like big bold step of sacking Priti Patel. I think that just kind of shows just how he's not taking this seriously, and he's not changing the actual like bureaucracy and the establishment of things, because he seems to be very, very much focused on just keeping his close friends and close allies close to him. So I do think that we haven't really seen a change, and I do think that drastic action needs to happen, and it's just not, because Boris has his own interests at heart.
Yeah, Arthur, I want to come to you. What do you think? Do you think this Boris had a good relaunch week?
No. I mean, it's actually a funny thing is, because in Imogen's point, I mean, the whole idea of bringing Dominic Cummings was he was going to, rip up and not subvert, but disrupt these, these calcified, kind of corrupt, inert, kind of Westminster bureaucratic institutions, and he's completely and unambiguously failed at that. And especially the image, I might be kind of preempting the article I've got coming up next week, but the image he's cultivated he previously cultivated of himself is like this kind of competent renegade intellectual who was going to kind of reform the government and bring a new kind of vigor to its operation. I mean, the government's initial woeful response to the coronavirus pandemic just illustrated that to be complete, just be a complete kind of illusion, and maybe a lot of journalists maybe got swept up in the initial hype when really there was none. Yeah, and also on Priti Patel, I would say that this is not surprising at all. I mean, Boris Johnson is, obviously every politician will act in ways which are most congenial to their political interests. And Boris Johnson has made a judgment that keeping Priti Patel on side, who is quite popular among the Tory grassroots, will benefit him more. However, I feel like even maybe Theresa May or David Cameron or Tony Blair would have been more kind of cognizant of being perceived to be shameless and just complete, like they would have at least kind of, they would at least probably said to her, all right, Priti, we'll sack you now, but come back in 2 years. But I feel like this administration, there's a kind of new level of shamelessness, which has been observed by many, even within conservative intellectual circles, for example, like Matthew Paris. And I'm not sure that this is a particularly effective approach in the long run. But then again, I mean, he's still polling well, and keeping Priti Patel will keep him popular among the Tory grassroots. So who can say? But it's not a good look.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned Theresa May. Obviously, Theresa May fired Priti Patel. Only was it, oh god, how many years ago is it now? Time means nothing to me anymore. Over Priti Patel's sort of illegal domestic background with Israel. Is it how we've now gone from a period where Priti Patel was been fired, is now being welcomed back into government and almost defended despite violating the ministerial code of conduct? Will, I want to ask you: is ministerial responsibility dead?
Yes, I think you could say that for some ministers. They can almost do anything now and get away with it. We've had, as you mentioned, Priti Patel's been fired before. She met behind the backs of the UK government with Israeli officials, and yet now she's back in government. And as the reporters said, she's been found to be bullying her officials, yet she still seems to be maintaining her role in the government for what seems to be no clear reason other than Boris thinks it will help him as opposed to help the country.
Yeah, Arthur, I want to come to you. Do you, Adam? Adam, I want to come to you. Do you think ministerial responsibility is dead? If you will, let me come to you, Adam. Are you all right? It won't. My computer seems to have died. So okay, there we go. Adam, are you there? Are you with us?
It's it is very close to being dead. I think in this current administration, it most certainly is, for the simple reason is the Prime Minister has no control over his ministers. He doesn't seem to be able to actually dismiss them. It stems back for me from when he went to the defence of Dominic Cummings on his trip to Barnard Castle, and the fact that he has wanted to almost put a ring around the Pritzker. I think it was how it was reported from what he supposedly said. I think obviously if it was a different Prime Minister, it would be a different kettle of fish on their leadership. But if Boris Johnson does do this reshuffle that it looks like he's going to do, he's going to really need to pull all the stops out to make it very clear that he is the one in charge and that ministers have to abide by the rules set out in the ministerial code. And given the fact that the Prime Minister's special advisor on the ministerial code resigned after his conclusions were not accepted by the Prime Minister, just really shows that ministerial responsibility in this government just does not exist at the moment in time.
Now I sort of want to go talk from this topic from one part having a bad week to the other part having a bad week in the name of balance. So let's talk about Corbyn or Corb out. Now, Jeremy Corbyn, as you may remember, he was suspended from the Labour Party after his comments on the EHRC or R report. He was then readmitted last week, but now Keir Starmer said he will not return to Labour whip for at least 3 months. Is this the right call from Keir Starmer? I want to come to you, Will.
I think it just shows that there's quite a big internal struggle going on within the Labour Party. You've got the more Corbynite left wing who clearly want Corbyn back in the party, think he should be let back in the party, think he's done nothing wrong. And then you've got the more Starmer-led, like centre-left, more to how Blair was in the early 2000s, who think that the best chance for Labour politically would be to not let Corbyn back in, because general public perception seems to be that he has been a fairly anti-Semitic in the past.
Yeah. Now, Arthur, I want to ask you: do you think? Because obviously, Keir Starmer made some serious gains when he removed, Jeremy Corbyn. Labour started polling more consistently above the Tory party. Now, do you think this is the right call to let him back in?
Honestly, it's a good question. I mean, I'm no fan of Corbyn, but I do think the original decision to kind of expel him, and I'm aware that was kind of a disciplinary decision and not one like directly made by Keir Starmer himself. At least that's what's been said. But I do think the original decision was somewhat gratuitous insofar as it's kind of caused more of a fuss than maybe necessary. Like, Corbyn's irrelevant. He lost 2 elections, and Keir Starmer is quite, as has illustrated, a kind of resolute impetus to kind of implement the demands of the report. So I think the initial expulsion might have been a bit overboard, and I think we're seeing why now, because now the party's going to devolve into further. I mean, factional warfare is kind of the the state of play for the Labour Party generally. But now, it's reached new heights. And I think, given the current circumstances, if I feel like Keir Starmer was between a rock and a hard place, I think not giving Corbyn back the whip was right, because he's already alienated the Corbynite base, who are, to put it like, very dedicated to their leader, and sometimes to an absurd degree. So yeah, I think he made the right decision overall, but again, because of the initial expulsion, he's now in a position where whatever he does, he'll be alienating some component of the party. And the next election is probably going to be in 2024. So probably by then, this will just be, this no one will be thinking about this anymore, and Corbyn will be in irrelevance. But for now, there's going to be some trouble.
Yeah, I mean, if you called the decision to expel Corbyn gratuitous there, many people have said that rather than intervening directly or indirectly, Keir Starmer should have left Corbyn to be dealt with the new independent process Labour is building. Imogen, I want to come to you. Do you think it was Corbyn's situation something that had to be handled immediately, or do you think it was something that could have been left for an independent process?
I do think that, we do have to look at this in terms of politics. And I do think that Starmer is treating the situation more so with like creating a good party image and kind of being a good alternative to the Conservative government. So, for example, we've seen a lot of U-turns in the government. We've seen a lot of backtracking on so many policies. And I think that, Keir Starmer's really trying to drag on this and say that, he's not going to be someone to quickly U-turn. He's going to stick to his word and he's going to see it through to the end. So I do think that it's a bit of a political decision for him to say that, no, Corbyn's out, we're not taking him back in, to just to prove that he is a good alternative to what's going on at the moment, that he does stick to his word, and he will continue to act on what he's previously said and what other people have previously said, because I do think that a lot of people haven't really seen Starmer's Labour Party as a good alternative to government, and I do think that's probably one of his tactics, is just showing that he does stick to his word and he will follow through with different reports coming out and different people's opinions coming in. So instead of looking at actually in terms of should we leave it to like an independent body to be able to really delve deep into the situation around anti-Semitism, I think Starmer's just saying the best political decision right now is just to completely keep him expelled and not to have to deal with that anymore and take a more like decisive tone to be able to contrast with the Conservatives.
Yeah, but of course this raises the big spectre of what the whole issue with the HRC report was, that it claimed that Labour's leadership office was too involved in its disciplinary matters. Adam, I want to come to you. Is Starmer showing here that he may be, the problems from Corbynism still there, just in a new coat? Oh, okay. Adam is not on the mic right now, so I want to come to you instead, Arthur. Do you think that the problems we're seeing now proves that Starmerism there's not been that much change underneath Keir Starmer?
I think it's inevitable that Labour Party leaders are going to fiddle with the process in a way that's most congenial to their ends. I mean, obviously, with this case is somewhat distinct to past instances of kind of leadership involvement, insofar as this pertains to like a disciplinary process for anti-Semitism. But again, like, rule changes are the norm for Labour leaders, who are often trying to get the better of their ideological opponents, who are constantly seeking to undermine them. And in this case, I do think that, again, like, a big takeaway from the report was that the process should have been left independent. But as Imogen was saying, kind of the political ramifications of being seen to fire Corbyn and let him back in, I think would have been very toxic. So I think kind of if he didn't intervene in this way, there would have been a more severe backlash, which I think Keir Starmer quite rightly wanted to avoid.
Yeah. Now, obviously, some of you may recall that there was a report released right before, I think, right after Keir Starmer took power in the Labour Party, a few months ago, that implicated huge factional infighting, and part of the reason Labour's processes were so jammed up. An inquiry into that report is now preparing to release its results. Adam, I want to come to you. Do you think this inquiry is going to help the Labour Party, or it's going to just further aggravate factional infighting?
Well, I think initially there is going to be that factional infighting that's going to occur regardless of what happens. It definitely will be exacerbated by this inquiry, but I can see why they may have no choice but to actually take it, because that process resulted in potentially even more legal trouble for the Labour Party, with some people named in that report actually seeking defamation claims as a result of being leaked. And quite frankly, people will not have confidence in the Labour Party unless they can see to be effective. Sir Keir Starmer, as having been former Director of Public Prosecutions and before that will have he will really want to get on top of this, because they do not want to lose a general election in a row come 2024. And it might be that you have to rip off the plaster, and it's going to hurt for a bit. But that might be the only way for Labour to actually find its way through this mess and come back together.
Yeah. Now, if you're watching at home and you have an opinion on Jeremy Corbyn, and statistically you probably do, please share in the comments and we'll discuss it here on the show. Now, something else Keir Starmer has to be worried about, of course, is a potential leadership challenge. Arthur, I believe you were talking earlier about potential leadership challenge from Ian Lavery. Would you like to elaborate a bit?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I haven't invested much time looking into this story, since it's not worth that much time. Ian Lavery challenging Keir Starmer, like, will it amount to anything? I mean, he would lose, I'm pretty sure, because of what it is. But at the same time, we've seen reports that Corbynites have been leaving the Labour Party en masse. Something like the membership has dropped down to 450,000. So if Ian Lavery did actually go through with this leadership challenge, he'd be in a weaker position to win it, because a lot of his base have since kind of fled the party. So yeah, especially considering this kind of change of the facts on the ground, I think it's quite. If Ian Lavery does go forward with this challenge, I think it's quite unlikely that he'll make much progress. And a second point, I heard I think it was the Spectator's Coffee House podcast recently, James Forsyth, their political editor, said that many Labour MPs had like the scent of power in their nose. So as a result, a lot of them who may privately be more kind of sympathetic to Corbyn are kind of publicly putting aside those concerns, because they are aware that Keir Starmer has boosted the party's popularity quite significantly, and he has relatively high approval ratings compared to their previous leader. So I feel like many, particularly the Parliamentary Labour Party, who might have maybe more ideologically close to Ian Lavery, would be reluctant to support him, because they are aware that Keir Starmer has made some progress in building up the ground lost by Corbyn, and Ian Lavery would be running as a kind of Corbyn continuity candidate. Let's try a third time.
Yeah.
So I don't think that many MPs would be keen on that.
Yeah. Well, if you are an Ian Lavery reporter, please write into the show and tell us why. Just why. Now I wanna ask the panel. This is a very informal poll. Was anyone here a supporter of Corbyn? Arthur, I know you weren't. Was anyone here a supporter of Corbyn while he was in power? Dead silence. It's not good for ideological variety. Does anyone here support Keir Starmer now that he's running the show? Again, dead silence.
I vote for Lisa and Andy, so
Labour is not having a good time on this show today, honestly. And if Ian Lavery was to take over, would that finally swing you round into the supporting column, or is that not the magic bullet you're waiting for?
None of them are good enough for me, really. I suppose potentially Jeremy Corbyn on his stance in terms of like human rights and climate change, and a bit more leftist views would probably appeal to me. but we do have to take these accusations of anti-Semitism seriously, and I'm not one to completely undoubtedly follow someone because I have a few of the similar aligning beliefs, and we do need to consider this challenge properly and not leave it to the side because we're going to focus on like his other like points that he's made or his other like policies or stuff like that. But we do also need to consider that we need to have the same kind of standards for him as we're having for anyone else in the political system, majority of which in the Conservative Party, holding them account for Islamophobia in their party and anti-Semitism. And so although we do need to take his accusations seriously, I do think it's probably more than just Corbyn, and it's much more to do with the political system, and we do need to be aware of that, especially to do. I'm not saying Keir Starmer is anti-Semitic, but I'm saying that he needs to be aware of more than just Corbyn. He needs to be aware of the like political institutions as a whole, and really making sure that we can hold parties to account for Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, racism in the party ranks, and of course Boris Johnson in the Conservative Party.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, final question is before we get on to America: who had a worse week, Keir Starmer or Boris Johnson?
Boris Johnson.
I disagree. But...
okay. Oh, well, Imogen, you put up your argument, and Arthur will come to you.
I do. I just think that it just goes bad to worse. Really, everything that he comes out with is going to be challenged in some way. Even like his decisions about the Christmas lockdown, having like a 5-day period of breaking the rules and then just going back into a lockdown again. That doesn't seem very. It doesn't seem like he's taking this seriously. It doesn't seem like, for me personally, I think that the whole process of lockdown, and he doesn't know where his head's at, and things seem to be going bad so fast. And then with Priti Patel as well, with Cummings leaving, I think that his week hasn't been good, and I think that if anything, it's shown that Keir Starmer's taking this seriously by keeping Jeremy Corbyn out of the party, and therefore kind of might have played in his favour more so than giving him a bad week.
Yeah. Now, Arthur, what's your response?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think this whole Priti Patel thing is going to pass because sleaze is the norm of the Boris Johnson regime. Like, that is established beyond doubt. His supporters will be like, well, we don't care, and his opponents will be annoyed. But that's just the state of play. It's a sleazy, shameless administration, and this Priti Patel saga is just a continuation of that. While on the other hand, I think Keir Starmer will have a lot of trouble dealing with kind of an unruly left-wing faction, particularly in the membership. I think this will be, in terms of their immediate political problems, particularly vis-a-vis their actual parties. I think, but like Boris Johnson doesn't have much opposition on the Priti Patel issue. Loads of backbenchers came out to defend her. While on the other hand, Starmer is, he's going to deal with a lot of internal dissent on the left because of his decisions about Corbyn. And as I said earlier, I think the Parliamentary Labour Party doesn't care, and Ian Lavery is not going to get anywhere with them. But that said, there's still scope for some difficulty on his side.
Yeah. Well, Will, I'll come to you. You can be on a deciding vote. Who had a worse week, Boris Johnson or Keir Starmer?
I think I'm going to have to go for Boris Johnson. I think the Labour issue, it's more of an internal struggle at the moment. It's yet to bleed out into more like the public sphere. Whereas Boris Johnson, every decision he seems to be making at the moment is coming in for some form of criticism and eventually gets turned around in a week or two. So it just seems that Boris Johnson is having a tough time of it, but it's almost of his own making as opposed to external factors beyond his control.
Yeah. And so there it is. There we have it. Boris Johnson, sorry, you're officially having the world's worst week. But not as bad a week as Donald Trump is having. So you can take that as a bit of consideration. Donald Trump has lost the presidency in the United States of America. Even I, as an impartial newsman, can say that. Of course, no one's going to say that to him. He's still launching legal challenge after legal challenge to try and get the vote overturned, trying to nice-ification, trying to force recounts. All while denying Joe Biden the transition funds he needs to start getting to work. Now, this is very hard to cover because I want to start by going around and ask people: Do you think this can even possibly begin to work? Do you think Trump can get the result overturned? Arthur, I want to come to you as my American policy expert.
No, he's failed. Almost every single lawsuit has failed. There's one which which was to kind of make sure that Republican observers could get closer to the people counting the votes, but that's whatever. That doesn't mean anything really. All the states Biden won by 2 big margins to be feasibly swung by recounts. I haven't been following the minutiae of which state has formally declared, but I believe that Georgia has already formally declared. So this isn't exactly an October revolution. This is Trump and his team flailing about. And again, there's a lot of talented constitutional and election lawyers, am I right? But that was illustrated with stark effect in 2000. Yeah, even barely any of them are willing to take Trump as a client in this case, because the allegations and the attempts to overthrow the election have been so just lacking credibility. I know it's been riffed on a lot, but just Rudy Giuliani, that speaks for itself. When was the last time he did any law cases? He's a politician, he's not a lawyer. Why is he the main legal guy for Trump administration when he's literally it's kind of like when he said, I'm going to put Ted Cruz on the Supreme Court a few months ago. Ted Cruz might have done law at Harvard, but he's a politician by trade. He was a lawyer previously, but if being a lawyer 15 years ago doesn't make you a good lawyer after 10 years in the Senate. So yeah, it's not going to go anywhere. Barring some major intervention. Who knows, Putin might invade the country.
I swear to God, if this year ends with a Russian invade, don't even say that, Arthur, because every time on this show I joke about things getting worse. Things always get worse.
I think we're quite safe making that joke, to be honest. For some reason,
that's what we thought about coronavirus back in January. We were like, oh wow, there's a deadly plague going around, and then what happened? It cancelled term 3. So don't start. This story is very hard to discuss. I can't stop myself cackling with glee. Everything that's happened, every single detail is just like a world's greatest farce unfolding. But we do have to sort of be serious. Trump is seriously undermining faith in American elections, and the Republican Party seems to be by and large going along with it. Do we think we're heading towards a long-term decline and not just obviously we're always in the sense to say decline, but a serious loss of faith in the American election system? I want to come to you, Imogen.
I don't think so. I was so surprised that Trump, hasn't been able to completely overturn the election and rule again for another few terms because of the pandemic and using that to his advantage. But I think what these past few weeks have shown is that even if you do have a really strong and kind of selfish and very, very motivated executive and a president, that is going to be well checked. Because I do think obviously Trump had it in him to really, really try and challenge the result of the election. And I do think that he was fully ready to take on a proper challenge and actually be able to overturn the result. But these past few weeks have shown us that, even if you do have that really strongly motivated executive and president, that will be counteracted by the checks and balances of Congress and the Supreme Court. Obviously, the fight isn't over, but it's looking less and less likely, even with a predominantly conservative Supreme Court. We're still seeing that, it's very unlikely that Trump is going to actually be able to overturn this. So I'm going to have to say that I don't think that we're going to see an actual long-term decrease in faith in democracy. You probably would have seen that decreased faith in democracy in the US during Trump's term as president and his multiple powers that he used to try and undermine democracy in his in the country. But I do think if we're seeing anything right now, potentially is a resurgence of faith in democracy by allowing Joe Biden and allowing a peaceful transition of power. So yeah, I don't want to jinx it, and then tomorrow the Supreme Court will come out and be like, oh no, Trump won the election, psych. So I don't want to say it, but it's looking a little bit more positive towards, they do have the structures in place to be able to counteract strong executive power.
Yeah. I was really tempted there to like fake a news exit from that, but like, sorry, the Supreme Court have just announced Donald Trump is president again for 4 years.
Yeah,
I thought that would be too cruel. Will, I want to come. Yeah, I want to say, okay, let's move on to another topic here. Now Donald Trump he's now been pressuring people to elect faithless electors, who essentially, rather than voting for Joe Biden, they would vote for Donald Trump instead. This sort of desperate play needs to sort of ask, why is Donald Trump so unable to accept he's lost this election? I want to come to you, Will.
I think he's just unable to accept he loses in general. I think he's quite narcissistic. He always wants to think he's going to win regardless of the outcome, and he's just ridiculous at the moment. There's no case that is no meaningful case that is proceeding anywhere that gives him any sort of advantage. With the way the world's going, I'll say that, and then tomorrow we'll see that something has happened that does work for him. But at the moment, he just seems to be clutching at the weakest of straws. There is nothing there for him, and he just can't accept that he has lost this election.
Yeah. Now let's step away from Donald Trump because why discuss a loser anymore? Arthur, I want to come to you. Joe Biden started announcing his picks for things like Secretary of State. Who do you think Joe Biden should put in those high offices?
To be quite honest, I have no clue. But there was an interesting article in Foreign Policy a few months ago, which is basically discussing how Trump's foreign policy actually had quite a few supporters in Asia and the Asia Pacific, and obviously China is now the big topic in US foreign policy. And in particular, there's this. Now, granted, I get the impression this individual was quite outspoken, but there's kind of who is an academic or diplomat or MP from Singapore who was quite adamant that he didn't want Susan Rice, who was was she Secretary of State under Obama or National Security Advisor? I believe she was National Security Advisor, but he was quite adamant that he didn't want her in a role because he perceived her as too soft in China. And I think more broadly, I think that just kind of taps into the debate, right? I think the Biden campaign has kind of largely adopted, if not in the same kind of haphazard, the same haphazard mentality. They still have adopted like the Trump administration's more skeptical and confrontational approach to China. So I think whoever Biden picks will. Again, there's been a lot of emphasis on returning to kind of returning to the values and norms which garnered America respect in the world under Obama. But at the same time, I do think in terms of the actual meat of the policy, I think that we will see a significant shift, and whoever Biden appoints will reflect that. So maybe that could see more engagement with countries potential which have some scope to be aligned with the US in its tensions with China, for example, India, Japan, Singapore. So I think you will see a somewhat similar approach to Trump, but both more cautious and also more coordinated with America's allies in the region, and there will be less kind of trepidation about aligning with powers who might not share the US's kind of values on human rights, for example, in certain respects.
Yeah. Well, I can announce that Joe Biden has announced his choice for for Secretary of State, Tom Blinken, not Anthony. I can't say his name. His name should be Tom. I think it's a better name. Tony Blinken, who, this is a fun fact, is part of a band called A Blinken. And has Spotify account links to on his Twitter page. I like it when America gets to be the light news story end the show rather than the really depressing middle bit. I much prefer this way of conducting a news program. Well, thank you everyone for coming on the show today. It's been absolutely wonderful having you. You've been an absolutely brilliant panel. Thank you everyone at home who's watched. You've been an absolutely fantastic audience, despite not saying anything. But that's normal. You need to say anything, it's fine. I just want to say one last reminder that Deputy News applications do in fact close tonight at midnight. So if you want to apply, please do now. This is to all the one person watching. But also, Insight is back next week, as always. But also, we're planning a lot of second news show soon. So please be on the lookout for that. It's been absolutely wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful, to talk to you again and give you a news update for this week. I'm your new head of music, Mukungu, and thank you for joining us.